Since before COVID, I've been watching board game reviews from Shut Up and Sit Down. Sometimes I'll venture into the Dice Tower or some other explained, or even watch a playthrough of board games. But I haven't really played a board game since Eldritch Horror on Tabletop Simulator, which I think at this point probably is a year ago, which that was fun. But I've always liked board games. But to the extent that I know anything about board games, it's Monopoly and Risk, which frankly are the most fucking boring and stupidest board games of all time. Although I do have a place in my heart for war games and asymmetrical ones, which we'll get to later. I've taken it upon myself to source some interesting solo to one to two player kind of board games, and I just want to fucking talk about them. So, okay. So, first, most recent thing I got was Paleo. Show it to you here. Oh, nope. Looks like ass. Nope. I had it good. Paleo. There we go. Okay, so in Paleo, you play as a caveman tribe, and you're trying to basically develop a culture, I think. I don't actually know what the end game goal is. I think you're trying to paint a cave painting to pass along your caveman culture to future generations so they can go into the cave and they can discover the star coordinates to a planet that will lead to a horrible movie duology, Prometheus and that other god awful movie, if you remember. Anyway, the game's fucking awesome. So you have these modules that are basically the world that you're going to be interacting with. And then on your turn, you draw 3 cards from the top of your deck face down, and you pick one of the cards, depending upon the back, that gives you a hint of what you might find. You can find different resources, and the game shows you on one of the tableaus what you can find in that particular area in general. So you pick based on your needs, and you might run into a rock slide. And if you try to escape the rock slide, you need to have 2 eyeballs, which are basically you have 2 people who are kind of, maybe they have good eyesight, or maybe they're just keenly aware of their environment, or maybe they're intelligent. You don't know what the eyeball is. And that's part of the fun of Paleo, is interpreting what the signs mean in terms of the abstraction of the theme. It's pretty fucking cool. So in that way, it's pretty neat. And to go a little bit further, and one more mechanic that I think really makes Paleo a fucking awesome game is that when you pick a card, you put the other 2 back on top in any order, so that the next time you're venturing into the world, you have to take at least 2 of the cards that you had before. So eventually what will happen is you'll have cards that look fucking horrifying. It'll look like the forest is burned, and you don't want to go there because it's probably going to be a fucking rhino stampede or something. I don't know if rhinos existed with cave people, but it's going to be fucking horrifying. But eventually you're just going to have those bad cards if you don't draft them long enough. So eventually you'll have to take them, unless you have a card that says remove the top 2 from your deck to get some resources, for example. So you can play strategically by your tribesmen kind of avoiding the dangerous areas by spending more time to gather maybe 2 extra fish because of the good area they went to. That's just one example of what you can do to kind of counteract that. So, in that way, that is an abstraction of kind of like moving through this caveman world in a more safe way, where you're not getting yourself totally screwed. Now, there is another caveat to that. After you've gone through all of your deck, every player has gone through all of their deck, the face down cards are then shuffled back again, and then you deal them out equally to the players. So things that you didn't deal with the first time, you'll have to deal with the second time eventually. So for example, in one of my tests, I ran into thorns, and I could clear the thorns if I had some tools, but I wasn't able to do that. So I just had to get, pricked all over my body, and I lose some health. So I could have got rid of that by sending it to the card graveyard if I had 2 tools. So if I did that, then the card would not come back the next day, essentially. So the decks symbolize you basically in your caveman day, just trying to survive, get resources before the nighttime, before you have to feed your family and pay child support. So that's really fucking cool. And the fact that there are bad cards that you can deal with and then they're gone forever, but there are also resource cards like animals that you can kill, and then those animals are gone. They go to the shadow realm. So you're having an impact on this world, and it's really interesting. You can help other people to achieve the resource quotas they need to satisfy the needs on certain cards. It's so powerful to see a game that has an abstracted theme. They could have just as well made a board game. And I mean like that in the most literal sense, that there's a fucking board and you have cave people on it and there's like fucking little stupid miniatures of velociraptors and other stupid shit like that. So many fucking board games just bloated with dog shit. Here's this game. It just comes out. It has exactly the components it needs and nothing more. It does have a scaffolding where you put your like discovered technologies and you can craft those things. And cave people are stupid. You can only craft up to 6 things at a time. Or you can only remember to craft 6 cards anyway, I think. And I just think that's fucking cool. Anyway, so Paleo is fucking awesome. So the next game, I have to preface it. I don't give a fuck about superheroes. The only superhero I give a fuck about is Spider-Gwen. Spider-Gwen, 10 out of 10. Every other superhero, blow my nuts. Don't give a shit. Okay, but anyway, Marvel Champions. It's a living card game, which means that they're going to keep making product as long as people keep buying it. The product will be a little overpriced, the individual products, but the expansions are pretty good. So the Marvel Champions card game, it's basically you pick a hero. Your hero will have a hand size, depending on if they're in their alter ego or hero form, and you draw up to that at the end of your turn. And that's particularly interesting in this game. Normally in a card game, it's your turn. Congratulations, you get to start doing shit, right? So the first thing you do, people used to Magic the Gathering. You draw a card, you untap some shit, you pay upkeep costs, you fucking find out that somebody has Frozen Orb in play and you untap one land and you just fucking walk away from the table and you never play with those people again. But this game is different. This game has the player phase. You draw at the beginning of the game and you mulligan. And then you go to the villain phase. And at the beginning of it's at the end of the player phase. You ready your people, so you untap, and you draw up to whatever side, alter ego or hero, the hand size, you draw up to that. So that's fucking cool. And why is that fucking cool? It's because at the beginning of the villain phase, you have a handful of cards that you can use to potentially respond to the villain's boosts that they will get. Boosts, I might have said that weird. For attacks or schemes. And basically the game works in 3 kinds of tensions. You have the tension of your health. Your hero can get damaged and they'll have to go in alter ego form and then use their recover basic ability to heal back up. And while they're in their alter ego form, the villain, instead of attacking and doing damage, will then scheme. They'll basically bring their side scheme or main scheme to fruition and do whatever they want to do. So this isn't a spoiler, but Rhino, he's the first person you fight against. He wants to break into a wall of a bank and get some vibranium. He wants to steal Wakanda's oil, basically. He's an American imperialist. He wants to do that. So if you're in alter ego form, rather than beating you up, he's going to beat up the wall that Trump's trying to build to keep Rhino out. So Rhino's going to be pounding that wall while you're in alter ego form, mixing beakers and shit. That's not good. But those are 2 of the tensions. The scheme builds up threat, and when it gets to a certain amount, you just lose the game. So you want to keep the threat down on the scheme. You want to keep your health, because if you die, you're dead. That's not good. But then you also, in order to win, you want to kill the villain. You want to beat him up so bad that he just goes limping away to the next sequel movie where he's going to be a side character and he's going to be helping the other villain, or maybe he's going to be a good guy this time. I don't know. But that's the game, essentially. And the best thing about it is that you can build a deck of cards. So every hero has 15 cards that they have to play with, and then you choose one aspect. And think of the aspects kind of like Magic. I'm going to use Magic the Gathering analogies because that's what I know. So like one of the aspects is kind of like control, like blue-white, essentially. So you got life gain and you got control. So you're going to be like preventing damage, and you're going to be building up this kind of like infrastructure to keep yourself in the game, and then maybe even heal other people. And then another one is about like allies, which are basically like minions. They come down, they attack. Usually when they attack, they take damage themselves. That's called consequential damage. And so they have a limited time that they can stay on the board. But a lot of people say that the game's better with 1 player, because when you have 2 players, the amount of time that you spend playing the game gets divided in half. So like you have one player, you're doing everything, and then you're doing everything again. And then if you have two players, well, you're doing something, the other person's doing something, and then you wait. I think the game gets better with two players, and I think it might get better with three even, because you can have specialized decks. So you could have somebody who's doing allies, and they're just shitting out allies all over the place, and their allies will get weakened. But you could have another player who's doing like a protection, or they're doing, I forget which one has the healing. It might be protection. Anyway, they could use that to like use the med team to heal up an ally. And healing allies is really efficient because essentially you could pay 4 energy for an ally, and the ally will have like 2 attack, and it'll have 1 consequential damage. So every time the ally attacks, he'll take 1 damage himself. And then, let's say he has 3 life. So essentially the ally can attack twice, and then he can defend for you. And when an ally defends, he takes all the damage that would be dealt to you that turn. So defending with allies is very powerful. But if you could heal that ally too after they've taken 2 damage, you get 2 more uses out of it. So that increases the efficiency of your energy investment in that card. And this is what the game comes down to, is you want to essentially play all the cards in your hand every turn, and you want to get a new hand. There's a trap that I fell into, and there's a trap that I think all new players will fall into in this game, is that you'll see a card that's really good, but you just don't really have the situation to use it right now. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold on to it for that rainy day moment. But the problem is that rainy day moment might never come. Now, despite that warning, I will tell you the rainy day moment where that did come in my first 2-player game. So the situation was, I was Captain America. I had a tableau of allies and upgrades. I had the shield. I had the helmet. I was ready. But I can only do so much as Captain America. And then on the other side, we had Spider-Man, who was pinned down by 3 Hydra goons, and 2 of the Hydra goons had guard, which meant that Spider-Man could not perform an attack against Rhino. But Spider-Man had flying web kick in their hand, in their arsenal, which costs 3 energy, and it does 8 damage. Rhino had 12 health left. I could very easily do 5 damage to Rhino, bringing Rhino into killing range for Spider-Man. But Spider-Man can't get through to hit Rhino. So what do? I'm looking at my hand, and I'm noticing something. I have this card that I cast it off earlier. I didn't even want to play it. It's shield throw. It's 0 energy, and you discard cards for X. And the amount of cards you discard determines how many targets you hit for 4 damage. The strongest Hydra goon that was pinning Spider-Man down had 4 health. So I played shield throw, threw the shield at the 3 Hydra goons and Rhino in this instance too. And I did 4 damage. I cleared the way for Spider-Man, for the Spider-Man player to then play flying web kick and kick Rhino's ass into Jupiter, and he's like actually dead now. It was just so anally brutalized. And that was like the ending moment of the game. And it was fucking tense because there was 12 threat on the main scheme. And if we got 2 more, we would lose. I don't like deck building games because I always feel like I'm making it inoptimal or unoptimal decisions. Like I just can't figure it out. So I kind of made some decks. And then what I'm finding out though is that like, I was like, oh, these decks seem okay. And then I played them and I'm like, oh, I see it now. I totally drop these cards and bring these other cards in. I totally see it. So that's one of the really fun things for me is like you play the games and then you kind of see what works and what doesn't work in the deck. And then you lay the cards out for that deck and you're like, okay, these cards, they're shit. Take them out. Bring these cards in. So that's fucking awesome. I think Marvel Champions is fucking awesome. Bargain Quest. Okay, Bargain Quest is a game all about drafting. You draft items to sell to heroes who are going to then fight a monster who's threatening the town. I hate drafting. I suck at drafting in Magic. I suck at reading signs. And if I'm being frankly, I just don't have the motivation or energy to pay attention to that shit to do it. That being said, everybody suggests Sushi Go. I fucking hate Sushi Go. The reason I hate Sushi Go is that it's not anything, the theme is pointless. To me, what a good board game is that the theme and gameplay are synthesized in a way that makes sense, that kind of brings to life what you're trying to elicit from the player's feelings. So in Marvel Champions, that was a fucking awesome moment where I could clear the way for Spider-Man to then basically one-shot Rhino at the end in the nick of time. That was awesome. That's a hero moment, and that's fucking cool. And in Paleo, you do feel like just some fucking stupid cave people who just don't know how to deal with problems because you don't even know what art is or you don't know what language is, and you're just ooga boogieing your way around through the wilderness, and a rock might fall on your head and you might turn into oil 10 million years later. Like, that might happen. And then, so that's why I hate Sushi Go, because you just don't do anything with the cards. You just draft them for points. And to me, victory points cannot be the game's, like, crowning achievement. Like, that's the guy. That is just fucking dumb. Bargain Quest also has you going for victory points, but Bargain Quest has a little spin on it. Is that, sure, you get VP for hurting the boss. You get VP if the hero you send that you're sponsoring to fight the boss, if they survive, you get VP. And you also get VP for every 10 shekels you have. So that's where the fun parts of the game is that you don't have to necessarily be selling to the hero in a way that it's going to cause them to win. I mean, it'll be better for you if they do harm the boss or if they live, because you'll get more VP. But if you find that maybe you can sell a more expensive item and you're going to get more VP that way, maybe you sell them that more expensive item and you don't get the VP from hurting the boss or anything else because you just got a bunch more money. And then you can use that money to buy upgrades. And the upgrades are really crucial in this game. A lot of people online shit talk this game. And I find that a lot of them, when reading the things that they don't like about the game, they fundamentally just don't recognize the depth of the drafting and the upgrades and the employees. They just don't recognize what's going on in the game. I hate drafting games. I promise you this. But Bargain Quest is so fucking good. I have so much fun drafting. It's so much fun seeing the new heroes that are going to come to town that you're going to bid for. The 2-player mode is really good in this game also. So how do you play the game? You have 4 items that you pick up. Another person has 4. I think I'm going to explain the 2-player variant. And you pick a card, and then you pass, and then you pick a card. What are you looking for when you're picking the card? So you're picking for a high value card that you can sell, but you have to pay attention is that the heroes come in with a certain amount of money, and you can't sell them something they can't afford. But there are certain employees or certain hero abilities or things that you can use to augment prices to haggle yourself down so that you can push that shit on to the heroes to buy. So you want to make sure you're not drafting too much shit to sell to a particular hero, but at the same time you want to draft something that has 3 to 4 hearts, because that's what you're going to put in your display, that you're going to entice a hero to your store. And the item in the display has to match what the symbols, basically the hero that you bring to your store has to be able to use the item on display. Now, there's a bit of an irony here is that the display item actually can't be sold unless you have a hawker, which allows you to sell the display item. And that is one part of the game that people kind of trip up. They think that that's a little stupid because, oh, well, the item's on display. That's enticing people. Of course, I should be able to sell it to them. But after discussing that with the person I played with, we came to the realization that that is clearly a balancing decision. And it feels like it's a really important one because there's an upgrade in the game that allows you to get a bigger display, and then you can keep the display item in storage and then carry it around next turn and then maybe sell it. There's there's an employee that allows you to sell display items. So it's not that the display is completely one single use. It's that it has a function that prohibits one player from getting super lucky. Because if you have an item that's like, 4 hearts, costs 30, and you can sell it to one of the heroes and it has the hero symbol that matches, you just win in that draft. So having the display not being able to be sold kind of is holds back somebody from winning through RNG, which I think is really important. This game has so many good comeback mechanics. And another one is that when the boss survives, they'll do some kind of ability, attack, or something. And what the boss does is always target at the person with the most VP, I believe. And I think that doesn't count money. So basically, the game kind of punishes the person in first, but the punishment isn't so bad that it's like totally debilitating. The game just really, I think, balances that somebody who does well early isn't going to just keep doing well. But somebody who does well early they have an advantage and they have things holding them back, but you can still win through shrewd play. The game, I think, is incredibly well balanced, and the art is awesome. There's a lot of like inclusivity, so if you're like an alt-right Nazi and you hate seeing fantasy characters in hijabs, I don't know, I hope I said that right, the head covering thing, if you hate seeing that, then this game is going to trigger you to go on a school shooting spree. So don't play it. But frankly, I don't really care about that too much. I think it's a fantasy world. I think it's kind of cool to see different way, because I'm frankly, I'm bored of fucking like white knight, like literal white male knights. You see that a million times. You know, peak Kino is female knights in non-erotic armor. That's fucking Kino. This game, I don't know if it has that. I think it might actually have a breastplate armor with tit modules, so it might be a little bit of a sexualization there, but yeah, I don't know, I think it's pretty fucking cool. So you've probably heard of it. It's like pretty big in the internet sphere. Root, an asymmetrical war game. Root has great art. Root should be a comic book. It should not be a war game. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Oh, I forgot the best one. Dun, 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 dun. Spirit Island. So Spirit Island is a game that I was full throttle enthused about the moment I understood the premise. And the premise is, do you want to fuck up a colony? Essentially, colonists, invaders, are building towns and cities on this peaceful island with natives, and you are a spirit, and you will be essentially awakening to this invasion. You will be spreading your presence on the board. So how do you play the game? You start off really fucking weak. You have 4 power cards that are particular to your spirit, and they have different costs. And how you pay costs is every turn you get energy. So the first thing you do on your turn is you'll pick a growth. Every spirit has like 2 to 3, maybe even 4 growth options. And the growth options can be get a new power. And how you get a new power is you draw 4 from whatever power deck, the minor or major powers, and you pick 1 and then you discard the rest. It increases the ability to find something decent that matches your spirit's elements that they want to build. So every spirit has innate powers, and innate powers are activated once you've basically built up the amount of elements you need to activate it. And how do you build up elements? Well, sometimes some spirits innately have access to certain elements from their presence tracks. But to increase the amount of elements that you have available to you to meet the thresholds to use your innate powers, you can play your cards, spells, your powers, I guess. I really kind of forget what to call them. And they come in 2 varieties, slow or fast. Fast happens before the invader phase, slow happens after the invader phase. And I think one of the noob traps is like, slow spells, oh, they fucking suck. But there's a level of power to playing a slow spell, having a bunch of shit happen that kind of changes the board, and then setting up yourself for next turn to do something really good. So I think as a new player, and I still kind of do that too, is I sleep on slow spells, but slow spells can be good. But what's the general kind of strategy? So the general strategy is you're going to essentially in the beginning, you're going to shit out as much presence as possible. So one of your growths will be like put down 2 presence, and you have 2 presence tracks. One of them will be the top row. That'll generally give you more energy or will give you more elements. Elements are not spent. They're just meant to meet a threshold. And then the bottom row usually is how many cards you can play a turn. And you want to work on both of them, because when you can play more cards per turn, you can better hit those elemental thresholds to enact your innate powers. And once you're able to once you have enough presence on the board and you're having enough energy income per turn, you can kind of essentially do the earlier growth, which is usually reclaim your cards, which gets all your powers back. And then for Thunder Speaker, she can draw 2 new power cards. So she's really good at resisting blight, because with her first power, she can draw 2 more cards. And one of the blighted island effects forces you to forget a power. Because the island's blighted, you're forgetting your ability to influence this area. You're just losing that power. But with her, you can just draw so many more that, hey, look at this shit. I just have, I'm losing 1 per turn, but I'm gaining 2. Now that kind of stalls you because you're not placing presence. And if you get presence removed via blight getting put on the board, that's going to fuck you up. And it's kind of funny that I think Spirit Island has a higher complexity rating on Board Game Geek than Root. But Spirit Island is not more complex than Root. And Spirit Island has an amazing rule book that is so fun to read. It is thematically and lore-wise really good. There's not that much lore. It's just that the natives are called the Dahan. I jokingly refer to them as Dane Dahan from that shitty movie with that Clara de la Virginie girl. There's just a lot of really nice things in the game that kind of help play it. And the game is not complex, but it has an incredible level of depth, complexity in what the player can do to react to the environment. Spirit Island is a game where you can sit and look at a board state for 10 minutes and you can come up with at least 5 ways to play that turnout in that time. And it's just such a fun game. It's everything I wanted Magic the Gathering to be. If you play Magic, Spirit Island I think is a must play because it hits levels that Magic wishes it could achieve. Which in Magic, the best play for me is that there's a complex board state and there's all these different interactions you can do and you do all of them kind of unimpeded and then you achieve this amazing end, right? But obviously that never really happens in Magic because it's a 2-player game. It's competitive. The other person's going to do something in response, right? But Spirit Island is so fucking cool because you can essentially create this plan that will just be so intricate. And there is some randomness in the game. And I think the randomness really helps because otherwise the game is just utterly deterministic. And that's not really that much fun. There's randomness with what the fear events do. And the fear events are always positive for the player. And there's randomness in what the Blighted Island card you have is. And there's randomness in what card you turn up for the explore phase, which will then go to the build phase, which will then go to the ravage phase. It's just fucking great. You could just look at a board state and just spend so much time thinking about how to play a turn, and it just gets better and better. You just keep realizing better plays that you could do, cooler things that you could do, better interactions. And for me, I've never had a game achieve that, and I've always wanted that, where I can just think about a problem and I can keep coming up with better solutions until a point where I'm just you know what? I'm fine with what happens with the current level of play. Oh, Spirit Island just does something for a board game that I've just wanted in any kind of game, video game, anything for so long. So it's just a 10 out of 10 for me. And Paleo, Marvel Champions, Bargain Quest are all fucking great. I play those with anybody all the time. Root, I need to give another chance, but probably end up trying to pass it off to somebody. Anyway, those are the board games that I got.